It is time to break down Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. The main event of UFC 319 is absolutely incredible. I cannot wait for this main event, guys. It's going to be bananas. It's going to be crazy. I think this is probably the best main event we've gotten for a pay-per-view this whole year. I know Ilia Topuria is a massive star, and we had that fight against Charles Oliveira, but I think that fight stylistically, it wasn't super exciting in terms of, like, we knew what would happen. Charles Oliveira, not very defensively sound, very hittable, gets dropped in every fight. Topuria, a lot of power. We were all expecting Topuria to knock out Charles Oliveira. We were just kind of hoping that Charles Oliveira could maybe surprise us, but that didn't turn out to be the case. But when we look at DDP versus Khamzat Chimaev, I think this is a very competitive fight. I think there's a lot of unknowns. It feels like there's a lot of aura in this fight. Both Dricus and Khamzat have that aura about them. Khamzat undefeated. DDP hasn't lost in the UFC, hasn't lost in quite a while. I cannot wait for this fight. I'm sure you guys cannot wait for this fight, and that's why I had to make a video discussing this matchup, giving my thoughts on what will happen on Saturday night, because this is a weird fight, man. This is a weird fight to think about. This is a weird fight to predict. It's a weird fight to be confident on, and I've kind of switched. I've kind of switched, guys. I'm gonna be straight up. I'm just gonna cut to the chase at the beginning of this video. I was picking DDP to win this fight when this fight got announced, and the months before that. But now that I've watched tape, I'm leaning Khamzat Chimaev. And it pains me to say that because I'm a big DDP fan, and I think he's capable of winning this fight. But I just think Khamzat Chimaev, I have a very good read when it comes to his career. I know a lot of people now are back in the hype train after he submitted Robert Whittaker in the first round. But I remember when a lot of people hopped off the hype train after his fight against Kamaru Usman. And I was like, when that Whittaker fight got announced, people were like, no, Whittaker's going to win. He's going to school him. He has better cardio, the striking. He's going to show him levels. And I always thought that Khamzat Chimaev would be Robert Whittaker. Even in, a couple years ago when the Khamzat Chimaev Robert Whittaker fight was just a fantasy, when that was just a hypothetical matchup, I always thought, no, Chimaev would sub him. And people would tell me, bro, Robert Whittaker's takedown defense, bro, are you serious, bro? His takedown defense, he's too good to that. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Robert Whittaker has good takedown defense. But against who? He's never faced anyone like Khamzat Chimaev. And if Khamzat Chimaev can do this to welterweights with the technique, with the athleticism, with the strength, he can absolutely do this to middleweights. Because there's nobody in middleweight that fights the way Khamzat Chimaev fights. And what happened in the Robert Whittaker fight? He submitted him in the first round. Khamzat Chimaev shot an incredible takedown that I don't think any middleweight would defend, if I'm being honest. And at that point, you're like, okay, Khamzat Chimaev can take down anybody at 185 pounds. The question is, can he finish him? Because we've seen guys like Usman survive. Gilbert Burns was an interesting stylistic fight because Gilbert Burns has nasty jiu-jitsu, so Khamzat Chimaev respected and gave a lot of respect to Burns' jiu-jitsu, which is why he wasn't necessarily going to the ground with him, or he didn't want to go to the ground with him. But when you look at middleweight, when you look at who Dricus du Plessis has been fighting, he's coming off wins over Sean Strickland. He's coming off wins over Israel Adesanya. And if you think about it, Khamzat Chimaev would easily beat, in my opinion, all the people that Dricus has fought. Honestly. Which is why I get a little bit confused when people bring up, well, Dricus has proven more. And I'm like, yeah, he technically has fought more. But when I think of the styles he's been fighting, I'm like, well, I think Chimaev would submit Sean Strickland. I think Chimaev would beat Israel Adesanya. I think Chimaev, he already showed he could beat Robert Whittaker, which Dricus also beat. I think Chimaev would beat Derek Brunson. I think Chimaev would beat Darren Till. I think Chimaev would beat Brad Tavares. You know what I'm saying? So when I look at Dricus du Plessis' resume, yeah, he's done more in the UFC, and Chimaev has had ups and downs. But when Chimaev gets in that octagon, in every single fight, at least at some point, he shows dominance. And I think that's something that we really haven't seen Dricus be put under. And I think that Dricus can survive. I think he can. But what people don't bring up, because this is the take that you're going to hear this week. Chimaev first round or DDP later rounds. And that might turn out to be true. Look, I think it's a very surface level breakdown and analysis. But in my opinion, I think, look, you're not considering the fact that Dricus, he's going to have to work to get back up to his feet. And in that process of working, what's going to happen? You're going to get exhausted. Dricus is also going to be exhausted from, defending takedowns, from defending submissions, from trying not to get ground and pound on the ground by Khamzat Chimaev. That takes a lot out of you. That is demoralizing. So this idea that like DDP is going to be fresh in the third round after being mauled by Khamzat Chimaev in the first 10 minutes is, I think it's foolish. Honestly, I think it's foolish, and I don't think it's realistic. And I think that you're not considering the fact that Dricus might be tired as well. Obviously, that might drain Chimaev because he sprints. But I also think Chimaev showed. He didn't really show it in the Whitaker fight because it was so short. But I sense at least that he's matured. I sense that he has good fight IQ. I sense that he's a guy that, he'll understand that, man, I'm going to sprint, but if I don't find the finish, I'm not going to force it. Or maybe he can force it, and he's still good enough. I think he's good enough to submit Dricus. I honestly think he's that good. I also think that his striking is underrated. I think Chimaev has good boxing. I know he's not as versatile. I know he doesn't throw as much as DDP. I think DDP has a volume advantage. I think, DDP goes to the body, throws body kicks, throws low kicks, throws head kicks, does a good job of pressuring, throws a 1-2, is very durable. But honestly, I think Chimaev has a power advantage in this fight. And I know that opinion might surprise a lot of people because, Dricus has been looking better. But, I was thinking about the Sean Strickland rematch, right? That was the last fight that Dricus fought. And Dricus looked amazing. He looked very good. But I also think that one of the takeaways from that fight was just how bad Sean Strickland looked, how one-dimensional he looked, how he didn't throw enough, he didn't risk it enough. He was even fighting with his coaches in between rounds. So, yeah, Dricus looked great against Sean Strickland. But, Sean Strickland is very one-dimensional on the feet. And I think Khamzat Chimaev is more dangerous. I think he's more dangerous on the feet. He might not have the volume as we saw in the fight against Kamaru Usman, but I think Chimaev is dangerous, and I think that if he's able to earn the respect of DDP on the feet, I think that's going to open up opportunities when it comes to the grappling. I think that, that will give Chimaev a lot of confidence that, hey, I don't need to shoot a takedown right now. I could kind of recuperate and strike, right? So I think DDP in this fight, I think he's the one that's going to have to take risk. I think DDP is going to be the one that, hey, once I get back up to my feet, or when we're in the striking, when we're standing, I have to pressure you. I have to get in your face. I have to make you not want to come at me. And I think that's the way DDP wins this fight. But I think Chimaev has a power advantage. I really do. I think punch for punch, I think Chimaev is a little bit more technical. And I think because of that, I think he has a little bit of more power. I guess at least a one-shot knockout power than DDP. I think DDP is more of a volume guy. So, like I said, the more I thought about this matchup, I was like, man, I think Chimaev's going to win. I'm a big Dricus du Plessis guy. I think that I'm going to be rooting for him. I'm going to be incredibly happy if DDP wins. But I just have this feeling that Chimaev is going to be a little bit too much. I think that he also kind of like Dricus finds ways to win. I'm curious to see how Khamzat Chimaev approaches a fight that's 5 rounds, right? Because I know that, his game plan is to go, in the first round, take down DDP and submit him, and maybe that happens. But I'm pretty sure at the back of his mind, he's thinking, okay, if I don't get this guy out of here, I still have 5 rounds. Okay, I have to be good enough to, stand with this guy on the feet. And I think that DDP, yes, he's powerful, but I don't think I wouldn't describe DDP as dangerous, if that makes sense. Like, DDP is powerful. He's capable of hurting you, but I wouldn't consider him as somebody who has knockout power. And I think that's going to be the dynamic of the fight. Obviously, I could be very wrong. This is just my analysis, my prediction right now. I think DDP can win. And I think that's why it's interesting, because if I thought that Chimaev, if I thought that DDP had no chance of winning this fight, to me, it wouldn't be as exciting. But because I do think there's a possibility here where DDP wins, even though I don't see him finishing Chimaev, that's another thing. Like, I think that in terms of finishing potential, both on the feet and on the ground, I gotta give it to Chimaev. I think DDP, if he wins, it'll probably be a hard-fought decision. That's the way I see DDP winning this fight. And I just think Chimaev's a little bit too dangerous. I think he's a little bit too technically sound. I think he's powerful. He's explosive. He's a natural athlete. He's incredibly talented. And I hope that we see improvements in this game, because I mean, if Chimaev is the same old guy that fought Kamaru Usman, obviously we didn't see too much from the fight against Whitaker. But if he's the same guy on the feet, then yeah, I could see DDP winning this fight. But I'm gonna go with Chimaev, guys. I think he's gonna find a way to win. I don't have an exact method. I think DDP will survive the first round. But I think at some point Chimaev's gonna win this fight. At some point, I think I could see him winning by decision. I could see him winning by a TKO. I could see him winning by a submission. And ultimately, guys, I'm gonna go with Chimaev. I'm gonna be rooting for DDP very hard because he's one of my favorite fighters currently in the UFC. I think he's very exciting in and outside the cage. I think he's probably better for the weight class in terms of activity. I think Chimaev maybe has more star potential than someone like DDP, but I mean, if DDP wins, I mean, there's still some interesting matchups with Imava, Barajo, RDR. I mean, if Chimaev wins, also that opens up the division. So I think this is very exciting. I think this is why this fight is incredible, because I think this will really map out the future of the middleweight division. And like I said, I think that anybody that tells you that they know exactly what's going to happen in this fight is an absolute liar. We don't really know. It's a very interesting fight. There's a lot of unknown elements. We don't know if maybe Chimaev takes a different approach to this fight. If I were him, I would tell him, look, entertain the striking with DDP before you shoot a takedown, and then shoot for the takedown. You know what I'm saying? Just to test your striking against his, because I think that a lot of people just kind of a lot of people underrate Chimaev's striking. I know he doesn't necessarily have the best striking defense. I do know he's hittable, but I think Chimaev is also very durable, and I think he's very powerful in his own right. You know, I think the performance against Kamaru Usman, which wasn't great, gave a lot of I think it gave it gave a bad impression that Chimaev is not a good striker, when he's shown that he's powerful, that he can drop guys, that he can stand on the feet with guys as powerful as Gilbert Burns in his prime, and, you know, drop Gilbert Burns and hurt him. And also him, you know, he's able to take damage as well. And like I said, even though Dricus throws a lot of volume, I wouldn't necessarily describe him as dangerous, guys. So that's my breakdown and prediction for this fight, guys. I want to know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.